You're listening to the Gold Standard Podcast. I'm your host, three-time Olympian and motivational speaker, Leah Amico. On this show, we're going to dig deep to unlock what it actually takes to build a foundation for greatness. If you're an ambitious person with big vision, but you feel like fear is holding you back, get ready for some major breakthroughs. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Gold Standard Podcast. Today's guest is another softball player, a fellow softball player who has traveled this world and played at the elite level. She was a shortstop for UCLA. She's a two-time All-American, and she also is an Olympic silver medalist from the 2020 Tokyo Games. Welcome to the podcast, Delaney Spaulding.
Thanks, Leah. I'm happy to be here.
All right, Delaney, I know that you are here from Southern California, not too far away from where I grew up. Tell me a little bit, because we're going to get into your Olympic story, but let's start out with a young Delaney. Tell me about, I know your family played a big part of you playing softball. Tell me about when you were young.
Yeah, so I have three older sisters, so I'm the baby of four. And two of them actually continue to play on through D1. So I grew up watching them play. I'm 10 years younger than my oldest and 7 years younger than my second sister. So I was at the ball field before I even started playing myself, and I fell in love with it completely. But I started out just like so many athletes, I think, in my local, local rec ball league, Rancho Cucamonga Ace, and played there for a couple of seasons. My dad coached me. It was so much fun just falling in love with the game. Like I said, I'd been around it forever, but I'd never been in a team atmosphere. So that was like my really first team that I got to play on. And from then on, I went into the travel ball world, and at around age of like 12 or 13, I think. And that's like when everything kind of took off for me. And I realized how serious I was about this game and where I wanted it to lead me. And like I said, I knew where the game took my sisters, and I had that to look forward to. So at a young age, I think I definitely knew that I wanted to play in college. And I don't know if that's necessarily normal for every little kid, but I saw it firsthand. And so I wanted to do the same thing as my sisters.
Did you have the desire to play at a certain college? Like you ended up playing at UCLA. Was that where you always wanted to play?
No. And I think that's a pretty common question of like, what is your dream school? And I will say that I never had a dream school. I just knew that I wanted to compete for a national championship. If anything, I went to Oklahoma a ton because, like I said, my sister played there, or I didn't say that, but my sister played at the University of Oklahoma, and I was there all the time because I was so young. My mom just took me with her. So if anything, I think like Oklahoma might have been in the back of my mind, but other than that, like I had no dream school. I was just wanting to win a national championship.
So what put that desire to win inside of you, would you say? Was it external rewards for winning? Was it internal? What do you feel like motivated you?
Definitely, I would say internal, but also external. I was very, I guess rewarded because I played on the OC Batbusters all throughout high school, and we competed for national championships in travel ball. So I think it was just I was always around a good athlete and a good team, and that just pushed me even more to like wanting something bigger, and that was college. At the time, college athletics was like the pinnacle of softball. So I was always had that drive to wanting to be the best. I surrounded myself with the best athletes, being on the OC Batbusters, as like was the best team in the country, not just California, in my opinion. So I would definitely say it was like an internal drive of wanting to be the best shortstop, to be on the best team, to push myself, but also I just felt like I surrounded myself with championship teams all the time, and I wanted that at the next level.
And was it something that these teams saw you and invited you to come play for them originally? Is it something your parents were seeking out, or did you have connections because of your older sisters?
With the Batbusters?
Yes.
I tried out for them. So from rec ball, that rec ball team, we kind of went into travel ball. So I was on a different travel ball team in the very beginning. And then once my talent kind of developed, I then went into the Batbuster organization. I had taken batting lessons and fielding lessons from Mike Stiff. So I had that connection with the Batbusters as well. And he was the assistant coach with Gary Hanning as the head coach. So that was kind of my connection, I would say. So, and then from there, it just took off with the Batbusters organization at a young age.
Well, obviously you had, the role models, you had your sisters, you're around the sport. I think that's important to be somebody that watches it. You had that internal drive, which I truly believe there can be external motivations, but there has to be that internal piece. I really truly believe that any elite athlete
I agree.
has to have that desire inside of them. And then like you said, who you surround yourself with, 100%, that is the gold standard. Surrounding yourself with other people who are driven, who are motivated, who are seeking after the same goal and that high level of achievement. Because what happens is they're pushing you and you're pushing them. But obviously you had some talent. Do you think it was important that right off the bat you went out and tried out for one of the top teams in the travel ball organizations?
Yes and no. So I actually tried out for the Firecrackers before, and they didn't want me, or whatever the case is. I didn't make the team. And so the Batbusters, we had heard they had another tryout the next day, and it was the perfect fit for me. It was Doug Meyer's team, and it was just the perfect fit. So I wouldn't say necessarily that my eyes were set on the Batbusters because they're the top dog. I was just trying to find the perfect situation that would be for me and my family. And it was it was local-ish to us. They were a very competitive team. I was going to that team with one of my good friends who later ended up going to UCLA with me as well. So it all just kind of worked out. But, I will say that, like I said, once I realized my talent level and my goal setting, that's when I kind of went for like, all right, let's do this. I got to put myself in a position to make it to where I wanted to be, and that's compete for a national championship in college.
Yeah, I think that's so good and that's so important. And when you mention the right setting for you, especially when it comes to youth sports, I think there's a time where people need to decide what works for our family. Sometimes it's very parent driven of I want this for my kid, maybe before the kid is ready. But
Yes.
I think when you can, as a family, sit back and say, okay, this is what's best for all of us, makes the most sense. There's some people that are willing to drive 4 hours to be a part of a team. There's others that think, no, realistically, we have other children and it needs to be within 30
Right.
minutes. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I think that's important. All right, let's talk a little bit about playing at UCLA. So you ended up playing your collegiate career at UCLA. What was the best part of the experience for playing for the Bruins?
Um, I think when people think UCLA, they obviously think of like the national championships and the traditions and, just going to the World Series all the time and everything. And although that's true, when I went there was a huge, I guess, like dry spell within UCLA softball where we had not gone back to the World Series. We had not won in a really long time. So when I got there, it was really just about building the culture again and getting back to the World Series. And I had a really good class, two classes above me with Ali Carta. She was a big leader in that. But just getting back to that first World Series, I think was crucial in my sophomore year. And then from then on, they've been to the World Series ever since. That was in 2015. So just building that championship culture at UCLA, I think was so much fun. And obviously representing an institution like UCLA with the national championships, how many national championships that they have, their athletic community, and obviously their academics. It was something that I did not realize what I was getting myself into when I committed. And that kind of goes back to what you were talking about how sometimes your parents know what's best for you, or they do most of the time. And that in this situation, that was it. And when I was getting recruited by UCLA, my parents were they weren't pushing UCLA on me, but they knew that it was a great school. It was close, it was local. They could support me. It was only an hour from my house. And when I committed there, I know they were so happy for me. And I didn't realize until I was at UCLA, but it was the best choice for me because my family is such a big part of my life, and they were at every single one of my games. My parents would come down on the weekends if they could, if I wasn't playing. So it was just a blessing in disguise to go to college at UCLA that was only an hour from me.
Yeah, I think that's important as well. I know for me, I, grew up in Southern California as well. One of the schools that I was potentially looking at, only a handful that I was really looking at. One of them was Florida State. And I knew
Mhm.
inside that that wasn't right for me. It was a great school, great program, but I knew it was too far. But there's players that I
Right.
know that will play across the country and it's the perfect fit for them. But I think that's another thing to take into consideration when you're an athlete of realistically what school makes sense and how important is having your family there, because for some people like that is the difference maker. Or I know some athletes
Yeah.
say, you know what, I'm not ready to go off. One girl that I know, she was an only child, so she went to a local junior college, and then now she's finishing out her career at a school in the Midwest, but she just wasn't ready and her parents weren't really ready, but now she was able to finish. So that's a great point. Let's talk a little bit when you mentioned rebuilding that culture, getting them back to the Women's College World Series. What would you say is most important in a championship culture?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it's trust. And that can go into so many different realms, in sports. Trust off the field, trust on the field, trust in your role on a team. And that was what we pretty much had to develop, I think, early on in my career. And just being able to go through the hard stuff that was off the field, whether it was, we did like military training, and that was, I think that's pretty common in college nowadays, but that was something that really built our trust and our camaraderie and just our competitiveness to then translate onto the field. And when I say like trusting in your role and owning your role, it's there was, however many girls on our team, and every single girl had a specific role that they had to accomplish, and trusting in that they're going to get their job done because I know I'm going to get my job done, and that's going to be the betterment of the team. So there's just a lot of like trust, I think, that goes into building a championship team and, taking it to that World Series. It's not just one girl or one pitcher that's going to get the job done. That's the beauty of our game, is that there's 9 girls on the team plus extras on the bench that are going to need to contribute to win a national championship. And I think that's, the making of a national championship team.
Good. I like that. I think trust is so crucial. I think trust also every role you talked about also, when you're saying I'm going to trust the role that I'm given, you trust the coaches in that, right? That's part of it. And so
Yeah.
when you mention that, you're saying that I buy into the leadership and, believing that maybe I'm not a starter, maybe I am a role player, but I trust that if I keep putting the work in, there will be a role and a part I get to play. And maybe coach is going to call on me in a really crucial point. I mean, we had that on the Olympic team as well, where we had a pinch runner come in and she scores the winning run to win the gold medal. And she, didn't get to start every game, but she scored the winning run to win the gold medal. So you
Yep.
remember that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And so, yeah, such great points with that. Okay, let's transition into making Team USA. Tell me a little bit about kind of when you first made Team USA. Like, when did even that dream begin for you to try to represent the USA on the field?
So I'll never forget the very first time I got an invitation. It was in 2015 actually, and we were not in the Olympic Games at that time either. So in 2015, I had gotten an email from USA Softball, and it said, "Congratulations, you are being invited to the national team trials." And I had no idea what it was because it was my first time getting that email. I thought it was spam. I called my parents and I told them, but I wasn't really sure what it was. And then I drove up to Easton Field at UCLA and I saw Coach I, and I showed her the email, and she just kind of like threw my phone down and gave me a big hug. And That was kind of like when I knew like, okay, this is real. And then I tried out in January of 2016, and I had been on Team USA ever since, after the Olympics. And it was just, I mean, it's the time of your life. That is what you dream about, to represent your country, and to be able to do it on the Olympic stage, which softball has been waiting for a very long time, was a true honor. And it was pretty much, it was the highlight of my career and will be forever.
From your experiences, because you played for one of the top teams in the country for softball at UCLA, and then you represented Team USA. In your opinion, through your experiences, what would you say is the special sauce, the secret ingredient? What would you say separates those that are on Team USA from really, really, really good collegiate athletes?
Ooh, that's a that's a good question. I don't know if I've ever been asked this question. Um, well, international softball is different, and you know that. And I will say what kind of separates the athlete, or just really the game, I should say, I think, is the mental side of it, and understanding um, understanding the different countries and how they play softball. And I did not know that my first year playing international softball, and I struggled a little bit. But I think once I understood the mental part of it, and just looking back at film, or looking ahead of to my whoever the next opponent is for film, I think is what kind of separates these athletes, and then the country. Because international game and college game is different, in a sense that you could be playing grown women. Like I was Stacey Porter. I was 19 years old, and she's 33 playing for Australia. Like, just you're playing grown women that are seasoned in this game, that are just very wise. And being able to compete against them, you have to have that level up of maturity than you do when you're in college facing 18 to 21-year-olds. So that's what I would say. There's a separation there. It's not just, I think, like, the college game is definitely high level softball, where they hit gap to gap, whereas in international softball, when you play Japan, when you play Canada, there's a lot of ball on the ground, like down angle, hitting it in gaps, being scrappy. And that's a different type of softball. So that's what I would say, is like, mentally, you need to be very mature and, level up. And then secondly, like, you need to understand every single country and their style of play, because it is so different.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. And that's something I felt. I told people, like, I think Australia, we're more similar. A lot of the Australians
Yes.
played in America, so it was a little more similar. But I said, once you get to the Asian countries, it is a different style and a different. So you again are trying to meet theirs, staying within your strength. And I agree with you. I think it comes down to mentality. I think the people that continue to rise, there's a point that talent can get you to, and hard work can get you to.
Yeah.
But then there's something about being athletes that not only know how to win and have that inner drive, the ones that are willing to do whatever it takes, and especially when nobody's looking, because when you get to that next level, it's all about what you do when nobody is looking. And then being able to adjust quicker. And that is what you talk about, like that mentality, and the importance of, okay, you really have to learn how to deal with failure quickly and turn it around and find ways to respond when you get punched. So yes, I agree with you. Okay. Now, part of athletics is that mindset. If everything was easy, we wouldn't need to be so tough mentally, right? But when you're
Right.
challenged, right? And we know, as athletes, as hitters, especially in the sport of baseball and softball, like, you just mentally have to be able to deal with failure and have good failure recovery. But I know that you went through something very tough right before the Olympic Games, essentially. Can you take me through the situation that you dealt with, and the trial you had to overcome?
Yeah. So I had already made the Olympic team for 2020. And as you know, they do this massive Olympic tour, and it's really special. We literally have every single day planned all the way through the gold medal game. And we were at the start of that in February and end of January, beginning of February, and we were in Florida, and we were playing our very first Stand Beside Her tour game at South Florida. And the last at bat, I want to say it was the 6th inning, my last at bat. I hit a ground ball to second base. I was running through the bag. It was an overthrow. So I was turning to get to second base, and I just fell on my stomach. I don't know where I just fell. And I knew right away that something wasn't right. And I got 2 MRIs, one at South Florida, and then a couple of days later, one at the University of Utah, and it was confirmed that I had torn my ACL and my medial meniscus, which is on the inside part of my knee. And it was no less 8 to 9 months recovery. And this was in February, and the Olympic Games were supposed to be in July. And at the time, COVID was not a thing, and the Olympics were gonna play in July. So it was definitely a gut punch. I, for the lack of better words, I feel like I lost myself. Like I identified in softball, and it was taken away from me in the most important year of my life in 2020. I was in a funk, and I was in a pit for, almost a week, and having to tell my teammates the MRI results, having to really sit with those results was really, really hard. I had trained, I finished school in 2017. So since, 2017, I was training for the Olympics. And on a very first game, to have that happen to me, I remember like repeatedly telling myself, like, this cannot be happening. Like, this is not happening to me. Like, it seems like a movie script. And that's what I felt like I was living like in a movie script of like, you're leading up to something, and then it just gets taken out from you. And you just, something that you see happen in sports, but you wish it never happened to you. And it had happened to me February 4th, 2020. I'll never forget it.
Wow. And so then how did you turn from that? Like, I know obviously COVID hit right after that, and obviously there was
Yeah.
this new potential opportunity for you once the Olympics were extended a year and pushed out and postponed. But even that, did you come to grips before that with potentially how you would deal with it, or was that where you breathed a little bit?
No, I opted out of surgery, and I got like one of those thick, huge braces, and I was just going to brace up, and I was going to play. I was very fortunate enough. I didn't have any pain. And I was going to go for it. And, my teammates all believed in me. I had my physical therapist and my doctors. They all told me I could do it. They actually told me that there's several Olympic athletes, football players, skiers, even soccer players that play without ACLs. And I had so much reassurance that I could do it. And I was very, very like head down driven that I was going to do it in July if I had to.
Wow. Okay. That's huge, because I know so many people, and I was just reading a book last night, and this guy, he was born without a hand, and he played baseball and played in college and wanted to go pro. But so many people told him he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it, but he was going to fight them, use that. And some people use that as motivation. But what you're saying right there, I love that reminder that we
Yeah.
sometimes are those people that can speak life into somebody and
Oh,
tell them the
absolutely.
dream is still alive. Maybe it's not going to look like you thought it was. Maybe it's going to be harder than you thought it was,
Yeah.
but you can still do it. So I love that, Delaney, about that. So tell me though, once softball, what the Olympics was postponed, then you
Yeah.
decided to have surgery because you had time now.
Yeah. Immediately once COVID hit, and it hit around in March, and they announced that the Olympic Games were postponed, I got on a phone call with my head coach, and I said, what should I do? And he said, get surgery. So I immediately contacted USA. I got on the list to have surgery, and I ended up having surgery May 5th, 2020. So a couple months later, because elective surgeries were not being performed. And I went to the University of Utah and got my ACL done on May 5th. And then after that, it was just rehab and get stronger. And I had the time now because we were postponed an entire year. So we weren't playing until July of 2021. So I had a lot of time to be able to build back to 100%, which I was very, very fortunate for.
So how important is it for people? And again, it might be something totally different, but it's a trial, it's a struggle, it's something they didn't expect, and they have to start back or maybe even lower than ground zero, maybe
Yeah.
behind in the negatives, right? And they have to work their
Yeah.
way back. How important is it just to focus on things one step at a time, one day at a time, and then mentally stay in that positive mindset until you can make it back to where you're going?
Yeah, especially an injury. I think that is definitely the MO of going through the process is one day at a time because it can be a very slow burning process. And if you just take the little wins day by day, I think that is going to contribute to your big win at the end, which was for me playing in the Olympics. And with an ACL, it can seem so dreading. It can see because it's just so painful and it's a very slow process, honestly, to get back to that. But I think what really, really, really helped me was the community that I had around me. And I had contacted a couple of girls that had gone through ACL construction rehab. And then I also just had my good friends on the national team and then some other friends as well that really I talked to every single day because it was COVID and I was training by myself. I was rehabbing by myself. I was very thankful that they were still open during that time, but it was hard mentally, more so mentally than it was physically. And it hurt physically. So it was just it
Yeah.
was hard.
Yeah, I think that's so great. And honestly, this is why I love sports.
Yeah.
Sports teach us so many life lessons and they put us through trials and tests. And sometimes it's batting average or it's making errors or it's striking
Yep.
out or whatever that is, not getting picked for the team, not being a starter. But then sometimes it's injuries and it's being cut from a team or it's something a little bit bigger that takes a little bit harder and it might cut our souls a little bit more for somebody
Yeah.
that gets out of sports and we're older, right? It could be losing a job, losing a loved one, things that there's grief and loss and devastation inside, but we need to bounce back. And that's where I think sports helps us because we learn those tools to say, okay,
Mhm.
today I might be down, but tomorrow's a new day. And now I can start fighting, but it's that choice. And you obviously have it inside of you. And tell me just quickly, because I really believe it's when you have your eyes on the prize and you know that that prize is worth it, that
Yeah.
all the hard work, you're willing to go through anything in order to get to that prize. Is that true?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. And I had a lot of time, but I also didn't have a lot of time. Like I said, it was 8 to 9 months minimum, and the Olympics were in probably in 12 months. So I had 3 months to get back into Olympic shape and to remake that team, basically. So I had that end goal of making that Olympic roster again and to making that team again and proving that I can be the shortstop. So, like I said, day by day, and those little wins that can contribute to that big win at the end is crucial in any type of I guess injury or anything like that that you are talking about.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Keeping that goal and like you said, now you went from 3 years of training, but then all of a sudden something out of your control happens to you
Yeah,
and now it's like that's okay because in 3 months I'm going to regain what I did in 3 years. And so
yeah.
that it's mindset. 100% mindset. Okay. So talk to me about the Olympics. What was the best part about being in the Olympics and the Tokyo Games?
Honestly, outside of softball, I will say is just the Team USA community. It was awesome. Like going into the village, and there's so many Team USA athletes that we had an entire building, and you just walk around and you just see so many different Team USA athletes that are just great at what they do and supporting you. I'll never forget the moment when we were going to our gold medal game and we're walking through the village to go to our bus and we're carrying our outfit and on our backs like because we had to take it for the game and there was a bunch of track girls that were out in the quad area and they saw us walking to the game and they just asked us where we were going and what game it was and we told them it was the gold medal game and they just freaked out and they were so excited for us and that is something that was and that was like every single game pretty much and all week. But that's just something that you can't get that anywhere else. And you crave that as an athlete. It's very similar as college. You know, when you guys are all competing for an institution, well, we're competing for our country. And just that pride that everybody had there that was a Team USA athlete, and probably every other country as well. But I mean, it was incredible just to be around such amazing athletes. And it really didn't feel like, you know, because an athlete was maybe in the media more than us or whoever else. Like, no, we never felt that. Everybody was on the same level there and just competing to win a gold medal because that's what Team USA did.
And I know your family just was everything for you throughout your collegiate career and would have been there every step
Oh,
of the
yeah.
way, every second they could be. But then I see on the news they're showing your family and having this massive watch party and cheering. So did you talk to them after every game? I mean, I know, did you feel that support even though they couldn't be with you at the games because of the COVID rules and policies?
Oh yeah, I was in a group chat obviously with my family, and they're texting during the game. So I'm getting every single text after the game, and just being seeing their support and just feeling so supportive through them. And that was so funny that because they were not planning to have a viewing party, but all my family, I have a pretty big family, and they were all coming, and then some of my neighbors were coming as well. And then Jess Mendoza had texted us like, "Hey, is anybody throwing a viewing party for the game today?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, my big family is going to be at my house." And they're like, "Okay, well, NBC is going to get in contact." And I was like, "Oh, NBC." I was like, "Okay." So then it just happened, like NBC came to my house for 2 games because the first game, you know, was so much fun. And then it just got a little bigger at my house. And so it created like this whole atmosphere, and it was awesome. It was really cool.
I love that. Definitely the celebration. And I'm a mom,
Yeah.
so I know how I cheer for my son who's
Yeah.
one's playing football or the other's running track. I just can only imagine with the Olympics as a mom. I experienced it as an athlete, but as a mom, there's just and parents, it's just something just extra proud for your child. Um,
Mhm.
I just thought, what about standing on that podium? How I know you guys won the silver medal, and obviously USA softball, there's tons of pressure, but when it
Yeah.
comes down to it, how many athletes can one even compete in an Olympic Games, and number
Mhm.
two, even win a medal? So how was that experience?
It was a whirlwind, to be honest. I mean, it was like immediately 20 minutes or so after we had lost, and there was a lot of emotions. But I'm so grateful that I had the pictures and that I was able to have the videos and go out onto the field even after we got our medal and just soak it all in. Because I'm being very honest, when I was not happy and I, you know, wanted no pictures with my silver medal or anything, but you know, with my teammates and everybody had said, just you need to soak up this time because, like you said, not everybody has the chance to be an Olympian and win a medal. And with softball in and out of the Olympics, maybe even softball players. So, but being on that podium, there was just a sense of like gratitude and pride. I think just a lot of pride of being able to represent my country. A really special moment when they do the medals, obviously one by one, and I was watching Aubrey Monroe put on her medal, and she kind of like did a signal for him when she after she had received her medal, and I saw that, and I was the very last one, and that I didn't want to necessarily make anything, you know, like preconceived or, you know, that I thought about. And but the camera was on me for a really long time, and I just looked at the camera and I just said for him. And it was just a really special moment because it just brought everything back of like the pressure, yes, to win a gold medal, but I am here on the Olympic stage with a silver medal wrapped around my neck. Like I have to give the glory to God in this moment because it was just an incredible moment for my personal journey and then my team's journey to get there. We had a lot of scrutiny on our back. We had a lot of pressure on us. And so to be able to be standing on that podium was, there's just a lot of pride in that.
Yeah, I agree. And I was cheering you guys on that entire way. And,
Hmm.
we know that the 2008 team, same idea. They got into that last game, had a battle with Japan and ended up just falling short. But ultimately, again, like we are all so proud. I know I was so proud of every one of you, and we're just supporting you all the entire way. And just as we get ready to wrap up, I do want you to just share a little bit about how your faith played a role going through your injury, playing on
Hmm.
Team USA, like you just mentioned, like you wanted to give glory to God, like how you tied that all together as an elite athlete.
Yeah, well, I really found my faith after my injury or during my injury, you can say, because I had mentioned it before. Softball was my identity, and I didn't know what to do after it got ripped out from underneath me, like in the most important year of my life. So I really just kind of fell on my knees, not, to be exact, and I just pleaded out to God and cried out to him, like, this is completely in your control. I don't know how I can get through this without your help. And that was just being very honest and vulnerable to him. And it was incredible, Leah, how he just completely changed my life and helped me during the hardest time of my life, because I was at such peace and ease during this whole process. And I don't think I could have ever done that without God's grace, because I mean, I was telling my teammates the situation that I was going through. They were crying and I was consoling them. And I just think that is completely like the peace that he had given me to be able to console my teammates for my injury. Like it was just moments like that where I'm just like, God is so real and he is with me and within me that there's no way that I cannot get through this. And going through rehab, just having like different moments and different points in my rehab where he just completely gave me strength. And going through the fast forwarding through the Olympics and just being able to have like um there was a really good group of us that had really strong faith and leaned on our faith a lot, and I was very thankful for being included in that community. But um there's a story in Daniel 3 about getting thrown into a fiery furnace so that you don't bow down to a gold medal or a gold statue, a false god. And playing in softball, that false god can be a gold medal at the Olympic Games or a game-winning run or just softball in general. And so that was kind of our standard going through the Olympics, is making it bigger than just that gold medal and just having our eyes fixated on Jesus, to really get us through the Olympic Games, because it is very hard and the journey. And so we had Daniel 3, and even if was kind of like our motto. Even if we don't win a gold medal, we're still going to praise Jesus and praise God. And that's what carried us through to the end.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And, everybody has their own journeys, but, when you're being real and you're being vulnerable, I think, like you mentioned, that identity is a massive piece. A lot of athletes find their identity in and their value in how they perform and what
Yep.
others think of them on a field or on a court. And it's hard. It's great when things are going well, but it's terrible when you get
Yeah.
injured or you're not playing or things just aren't going well. So, but to know that you have value and worth in who God says you are, regardless of the outcome, like that's powerful because that sticks with you. And like you talked about that piece, how can people connect with you and find you on social media? Do you have a website or you have, social media?
Yeah. I'm on all things social media: Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. It's just my first name, Delaney, and my middle name, Lynn. And yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm tied in with USSSA Pride, and I'm also tied in still with USA Softball. So I go to those events often. And then I'm also in Murrieta, California, giving private lessons and doing things with Murrieta and Rancho rec ball leagues and, different leagues around the areas.
Well, I know those athletes are very fortunate and blessed to work with you. So thank you again for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Thanks, Leah.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to the Gold Standard podcast. And definitely check out Delaney Lyn. She's on social media. Find out what she's doing because I know that you will want to watch and continue to follow her journey as she plays for the USSSA Pride in the Pro League for softball. But we'll see you here next time on the Gold Standard Podcast.
Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Gold Standard Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please share it with a friend. You can post on social media and tag @Leah20USA or use hashtag Gold Standard Podcast. Make sure you also subscribe so you get notified each week as a new episode releases. You can subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. We appreciate your reviews as they help encourage others to listen in. Until next time, live out the gold standard and keep turning your goals into reality.